Hi, and welcome to the Sports Innovation Lab Sports Zone, part of CES Partner Programming presented by Octagon. And thank you guys so much for joining today's panel, Building a Bridge Between Startups and Properties. My name is Gina Waldhorn. I am Chief Operations Officer of Sports Innovation Lab, and I'm somewhat of a veteran when it comes to the intersection of sports and big, large organizations. Prior to my joining the Sports Innovation Lab, I ran a company called Evolution, whose sole purpose was to connect early stage startups with big Fortune 500 companies. So I am thrilled to be hosting today's conversation about what I believe and we all believe to be such an important topic to the future of sports. And joining me today is a group of experts that all and each represent a different perspective from early stage startups, late stage startups, and properties. So I'm thrilled to be able to have them with us today for this conversation. And I'd love to introduce them to you today and kick off our discussion. So let me first welcome Natara Holloway, who is Vice President of Business Operations and Strategy for the NFL, where she has been for over 16 years. She currently oversees football technology and innovation, administration, and football pipeline development. So thank you for being with us. And you certainly have a wide view across the organization. So I think you're probably a gold mine of intel for startups. So thanks for being here. Also joining us is Bo Han, who is the founder and CEO of Buzzer. Buzzer is a mobile-first live sports platform that's built on micropayments, interest-driven mobile notifications, and authentication. And Bo's going to tell us more about Buzzer today. So Bo, thank you so much for joining us today. And last but not least, we have Craig Duncan from Venue Ties. Craig has spent most of his 20-plus year career helping sports, hospitality, and entertainment organizations improve their businesses through the use of data analytics and mobile technology. And today he's Chief Revenue Officer at Venue Ties, which is a technology company that helps personalize the guest experience and enable e-commerce for smart venues. So guys, thank you so much for being here today. We're thrilled to have this conversation. And I wanted to start by addressing the fact that startups are no longer the new shiny object. They've proven to be critical pathways towards innovation, towards market expansion, and keeping pace with a rapidly evolving fluid fan. And so to kick things off, I'd love to start by hearing from you guys about the state of startup collaboration today. And given that the pandemic exposed a lot of critical flaws in the sports industry's legacy business models, talk about how it's also provided a new opportunity and maybe driven new areas of interest for your organization. So maybe starting on the property side, Natara, if you can chat a little bit with us about, have you started looking for inspiration and partnerships in new categories since the pandemic?
Sure. Thank you for having me here as well on this great panel. I think that what the pandemic, what we like to say, both pandemics have really provided us as a property at the NFL is an opportunity to sort of change the way we look at our business altogether. So sitting on the football strategy side of the house, we're always planning on what does the future of football look like. But what the challenges of the past year have provided us are opportunities to look at new ways to do things. And if you follow football at all, we really struggle in the innovation area to balance innovation and tradition because our game is founded on so much tradition. But we were pleasantly put in a position this year of all of the turmoil, but pleasantly put in a position to actually be able to say, okay, maybe we can challenge that. And maybe, although that's tradition, there are other ways to do it. And so looking for partners and trust me, they were coming out of every direction when everyone wanted to help, thankfully to get the game going this season. But looking for partners that are going to help us not only address what came about because of the pandemic, but also just things that had been on the shelf because it may have bucked tradition in the past, and now we're like, oh wait, we can change this. Well, maybe we can change that as well. And so really it has opened the doors. We have a fantastic ownership committee that looks at the future of football, and we in tandem with them do a lot of research and looking at what innovation we can bring to the forefront of the game. And I think startups are at the apex of that. It's one of those things where if you have the right solution at the right time, this is your time right now.
Right. So did you find that some vendors that you may have been working with, larger vendors, were coming and saying, well, okay, we'll pivot and we'll try to do this for you now, but then you have on the other side a startup that says, hey, this is our bread and butter, and this is what we were made to do, and now we're right for you. Were you kind of balancing and hearing it from both sides of existing vendors who are kind of trying to pivot or, create new opportunities from their technology, and startups that were like, now's our chance?
Exactly. I think what was most interesting for me, for somebody who is so excited and passionate about this space, it was interesting to see those people who were, maybe they didn't already have a product or an idea, but the wheels started turning when they realized I can take whatever I have here and shift it and pivot to potentially overcoming your challenges. And so that's what was exciting about this period of time. If you could find excitement in anything, it was really around having these fresh ideas just coming out of nowhere. And now there's such an opportunity to see, as we sort of try to transition back to so-called the new normal. It's these companies who are going to now be in the mix because they were able to solve problems that we never even imagined we would have.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be exciting for the industry going forward, and it certainly is exciting for the industry right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig, I think that's a good segue. I think you guys, being a later stage startup that's kind of proven out your product and scaled at this point, would love to hear from you. One, tell everyone a little bit about Venuetize and what you guys do for those that don't know, but would love to hear, as Natara was saying, what opportunities did you guys see for to adapt your existing technology platform or apply things you knew your technology could do, but maybe weren't prioritized out of your feature set, but all of a sudden became critical given the state of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Gina. First, thanks for having me. Great panel. Love this topic and discussion. Venuetize is in the mobile tech platform space. So we're focused on fan experience, smart venues, but even more so today, that second screen experience and connecting with the fan and the guest around the calendar year, regardless of where they are. So I would say, what impacted the pandemic have for us as a whole? In a word, I would say acceleration, because we've been doing this for 6 years, as you said in your intro. So we're a later stage startup. I mean, we're still around 50 people, but we are working across 8 professional sports leagues, and so we have some viability in market, which certainly helped us, especially when leagues and teams and venues and districts came to us and maybe they were dragging their feet in the areas of mobile ticketing, mobile payments, just a mobile first experience overall, and really prioritizing that. It really did go from a nice to have to a must have in many ways. And credit to the founders of the company, the vision they had over 6 years ago to focus on these key capabilities and have a platform that was open-ended, that could embrace third-party technologies, right, and integrations. So when we talk about that second screen experience, and all right, fans aren't in venues, but they still want to engage. Matter of fact, if you look at the data and what you're seeing in sports betting and engagement overall, it's through the roof over the last few months. And I think that's put us in a good spot, but it's also extended out our reach and interest in working with other startups. So we can talk more about that. Yeah, but from our perspective, just acceleration, really. I mean, we kicked it off last year at CES on a panel, and I remember vividly talking about, this was almost to the day last year, so pre-pandemic, but we talked about cashless venues. And I was stating that that's a huge opportunity that we see at Venuetize, where there's only about 5 venues total in North America that were cashless. Now you already just look at, a year. Now, certainly the pandemic accelerated that. So I can't take credit for saying it was going to go to 50%.
You
in
can
the
take the credit.
3 to 5 years. Yeah, sure. I knew it.
You said it. And
Yeah.
how fast did that happen? Was there kind of a freeze moment where everybody just stopped, were a bit terrified, and then the wrecking ball kind of came in and it was like, all right, who can turn the key on contactless and cashless and is agile enough to kind of adapt to our current system and where we are, but is proven enough that I can get this, be ready for the time fans come in? Was timing like a big part of all of this?
It absolutely was. I'd be interested to hear Bo's take on this too. For smaller type companies, there was the initial 30 to 60 days where it was, what has happened? The world flipped upside down. What are we going to do? And for us, like I just shared with you, we felt we were in a great spot, having built up to this and have the the leagues and teams that we're already working with. Now we can go to that next level. But first 30, 60 days, everyone shut down, just trying to figure out what's next, what the next day is going to bring. Then it went into, okay, regardless of revenues being down, when fans are going to be back in, we need to be prepared. We have to be contactless. We have to be touchless, mobile ticketing, mobile first. And then it just, the floodgates opened and, we were prepared for it. It wasn't easy. We had to make adjustments to our business for certain. But I'm really proud of how we weathered the storm. Not that the storm's behind us, but as a company, we're in a good spot, all things considered.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, talk about exposing the flaws, but then those flaws representing opportunity. I think Buzzer and Bo, would love to hear from you. With the fans being stuck at home, it's really a layup for your value proposition and this idea of it's time to diversify revenue streams and it's time to reach new audiences and it's time to connect in a more meaningful way when we can't get butts and seats. So tell us about Buzzer and would love to hear what was it like for you and what opportunity has been created given where the state of the industry is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it has been a challenge for everyone in 2020, right? And we essentially started a technology company focused on live sports when there was no live sports, right? And so it gave us an incredible amount of time to really be thoughtful and intentional about how we build our products, right? And I think that disruption, especially in the tech industry, is alluded to be a net positive, but especially during this time, really understanding the challenges and gaps, especially for our partners, and how we can best complement and augment it, what's existing, I think is more and more important for startups to really understand. The last 4 years, as you alluded to, the last 4 years at Twitter, I worked on our content acquisitions team, specifically focusing on the acquisition of live sports rights. And my career has come full circle because Natara from the NFL's here, and the first deal that we did work on is bring 10 NFL Thursday night football games to the platform. And that was the start of the live video team at Twitter. And we quickly moved over to the NBA, NHL, MLB, PGA, MLS, and the list goes on. And what we've figured out is, Twitter was a great platform in notifying people that these close games are happening. And what was in the back of my mind was always, what if consumers or users can't access that content? How do we maximize or create that last mile technology of marrying intent to the actual tune-in of the live content itself? And so that's where Buzzer was born. Especially during the pandemic, where we saw a 3.5-month pause of live sports, and when everything came back, one of the biggest challenges were content discovery. Right. It was reported that, up till, in modern sports history, a sports equinox, by definition, where the NFL, NHL, MLB, and NBA all play in the same day, has only happened 17 times in modern sports history. It's happened 11 times in September alone. Right. And so one of the biggest, the new definition of Sunday scary, and I know that NFL owns that day, but was trying to figure out what to watch on a Sunday afternoon because there was just so much going on, right? And so
if you look at the Google Trends data for those days, all the number one searches are, how do I find like, where do I watch? How do I find it? It's just a lot of confusion.
Absolutely. And so for us, it's how do we enable data and be that technology to ensure that folks are discovering content that they care about in a timely manner, right? And so we know that these live moments are ephemeral moments, meaning once that moment is gone, once that play is done, once that game is over, it's a clip on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, right? And so how are we engaging, especially the Gen Z and millennial fan, within that live window? And how are we that technology that engages with them during that time, right? And so we find ourselves to be an industry advancer because we fundamentally understand how licensing is done. We understand the gaps in the industry. And rather than disrupt, we're trying to complement and augment, right? And so our appeal to leagues has especially been, how do we reach an incremental audience that is net new from the linear television audience? But also, how do we define a sustainable and incremental revenue channel of that augmented audience, right? And so that's really what Buzzer is about. One key aspect that we are investing considerably in is our authentication feature, meaning you tell us what you currently subscribe to, and if the live look-in falls within the rights that you already subscribe to, you don't pay the micropayment. It's right. Please use us as a content discovery mechanism. So again, we want to be very mindful and respectful of all the other, business models that are built, upon linear television, and how do we augment that audience and create an additional line of business for a lot of rights holders.
That's incredible. So I think we're all in agreement, working together. There's clearly opportunity and more opportunity given the pandemic. So I'd love to know, Natara, when and why, and what is the typical catalyst that drives you to go outside the organization and find an entrepreneur or a startup? Have you guys already prioritized categories, and maybe coming out of the pandemic, you prioritize some new categories that you say this is best for external innovation? Or is there a problem that you just can't solve and you've kind of said, all right, screw it, we got to look outside? What is that kind of push that drives you outside the organization into the startup ecosystem?
Sure. So I think for us, we sit in a pretty good place in this ecosystem where it's not necessarily a lot of us going out to find solutions for things all the time. We benefit from the fact that we have a big brand. We have a lot of people who watch the brand and can identify problems themselves. Everyone that gives a whole new meaning to the couch quarterback. It's not necessarily just the quarterbacks they're helping us as well. And that's totally great in this world because as fans are saying, you could do this better, or I bet if you did this, you could do this better. I enjoy watching this. And if it were this way, you could do it better. And I think that's what I love about our flexibility is that when someone does bring that idea to the table, we can, sort of go down the road of, okay, maybe there's, one or two participants in this space. How do we find the best one? I think that's more of our challenge is how do we make sure that, is not just someone who has this idea, but has a proven track record, because we're unlike other leagues. We don't have a developmental league. And so we can't necessarily test things in game without it really impacting the competitiveness of an entire season. So where we actually test things are Pro Bowl, East West Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and right now we're working on one of those three going into this new year, right? And so it's one of those things where we really have a challenge in finding the right partners. We don't necessarily have to go out and find partners because thankfully people are just amped to help the NFL in the issues that they have identified. But where we are identifying, I don't want to say we're just sitting around waiting for that. That's not nearly close to a truth, is where we are finding challenges and things that we want to tweak or just kick the tires on. We have had a couple of process that we've toyed around with in the past. It's just become so cumbersome. But what the pandemic has done is really forced us to get tighter on that process and try to and try to make sure that we can really be focused on some of the challenges that we have, whether it's in the player health and safety space, whether it's in the camera angle space, whether it's in performance space, whether it's in just a fan experience. I mean, right now, I think Craig said it best. It's like, people were like, oh, I don't want a digital ticket. Now it's like, I need a digital ticket. And so it's all of those things. From soup to nuts, we are really looking at how we go mobile, and how we become more agile, and how we become more of disruption into this very traditional space.
Yeah. And for better or for worse, the fan, and who we call the fluid fan, they're not quiet about it. You used to need to set, especially, the sports fan, some brands would have to set up a whole call for ideas and help us. What do we need to improve? You guys don't need to do that. They're tweeting it at you. They're calling you up. They're, knocking on your door, which is great. Filtering through it, I'm sure, is laborious. But and then, I've seen what you guys have done with First and Future, dedicated. So kind of having, it sounds like you've got these tracks like athlete performance and safety that are just going to be imperative to the game no matter what. And so you can kind of formalize an always on channel for innovation and entrepreneurs to come to you with their ideas, and then be more malleable and responsive to the market, whether it's a pandemic or needing the contact list to start hearing from fans for other ideas. So, you don't usually think about properties as being flexible or able to work that way. But Craig, would love to hear a bit about your experience in working as a startup, because you guys were coming up. What was it like working with big leagues and properties? Where were they super helpful? Where did they almost put you out of business? If you feel like sharing,
this is where I'm glad he can't throw anything at us. This is where virtual helps.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's tell us about your experience.
Yeah, no, it's a topic near and dear to me for sure. And along the journey here, our first league that we started working with was the PGA Tour. So that was the first one that really took a chance on us, and put their trust in a relatively small company at the time that didn't have any league clients. And I know from speaking with them, the feedback was, they wanted. Obviously, the technology is important, but ultimately any company and successful partnership comes down to people. And so really understanding, are these people, the founders, are they in it for the long haul? What type of team are they building out? Of course, they look under the hood in terms of the technology. And then, are you nimble? Are you willing to hustle and be scrappy? That's a word that comes up a lot in the startup world. Are you scrappy? And I take that as a compliment. When organizations say, we wanted to go down this path with you because we know you're scrappy and you're going to be there for us. I think more than anything is that last point, though, is accountability is the most important thing that we pride ourselves on. And I like to think that's where we built our reputation, why we are now working with 8 leagues, is you're not going to be perfect, right? Natara knows, and Bo knows, it's technology. Especially when you're talking about at a league level at that type of scale, you're going to fall down. It's how do you get back up, and how do you respond, and are you accountable, and do you fix it, and does it happen again and again? So those are things you just have to earn over time.
Were they, did they push you to alter your product, or, well, if you could do it that way? And how much flexibility did you give them outside of your roadmap? You've got investors to respond to. And so what was that kind of give and take early on with your product? And then Bo, I'd love to hear your perspective too, as you're kind of pitching now. Are you getting a lot of that?
Yeah, just real quick, on the investor part, it's absolutely goes up to that level in a small company, because you're going to take a hit up front. You're going to have investments that you need to make and at a loss on your first initial projects in many ways, and products that you're building out. So absolutely that comes into play. But the reality is, if you're going to make it in sports and hospitality, you have to have those league-wide agreements and trust. But I'll never forget, just real quick, the first meeting that I was ever in with the PGA Tour, their executive team came in and they spoke to our large group, and they said, we chose you for a reason, many that I just shared, but the thing that really stuck with me is, don't be afraid to fail, right? We're gonna move fast, we're gonna challenge you, but we don't expect everything to be perfect. we're going to roll this out at our first event. We'll get it right. Then we'll go to 5 events. And now we're up to over 40 events, 3 years later. So it's just that really, to a startup company, I've been on both sides of it, that's really good to hear when you have that type of flexibility and trust. Like, look, we want to be successful. We're going to strive to be perfect, but don't be afraid to take some chances. That's why we chose you.
Yeah, that's incredible. Bo, have you had similar experiences, and how important is building that trust as you guys are out there pitching right now?
Absolutely. I mean, thankfully, personally, I've built that trust during my years at Twitter, right? And so those relationships were established, and that trust was embedded by the partnerships that we've built over at Twitter. And so I'm very, thankful for my former employer, because just as a company philosophy, it is they are incredibly partner oriented, right? And their video product is called Amplify. Is how do we amplify our partners' videos, right, and moments. And I think that, especially as a pre-product startup, as we are, it's incredibly important to really listen to the feedback of our partners, especially our league partners, right? And really understanding where are the pain points. And it becomes very apparent, as I mentioned earlier, content discovery is a very big pain point for IP holders and rights holders and leagues, right? And so how do we help really alleviate that? Second is, how do we alleviate any concerns about cannibalization? Just to jump the gun a little bit, I think that startups also have this preconditioned kind of label of you're automatically cannibalistic or disruptive to our existing business if you are a new business trying to work with us, right? And we are not that. We are partner oriented. We are complementary. We are an industry advancer, and really deeply understanding what the ecosystem is needing, right? And so I think being very mindful of our partners' feedback of what is a challenge is something that we're really kind of focused on. And we can limit it down to 3 challenges. One is the fragmentation of sports rights. It's going to continue to happen, right? Where it's not really shaped around a sports fan and their interest. It's more shaped around what network is playing where, right? What sports is playing on what network. Second is, there is a generational gap when it comes to consumption of live sports. You have the older generation that are consuming live long form via television, and then you have the younger generation that are consuming highlights and clips that are optimized for social platforms, right? And so how do we bring them back into the live window and engage with them? Granted, it's a short window. Third is, it's not a new phenomenon, but it's happening right now. The unbundling and bundling of media. I feel like it happens every 4 or 5 years, right? And so there's a lot of people upset that The Office now is on Peacock and not on Netflix. Now you need 2, right? And so think about live programming of sports, right? You're tapping into multiple subscriptions to watch multiple different things. On top of that, content discovery, right? And so if we can build a product that really solves all of those and complement television, not replace it, right? I think we can have a very successful product that is very partner oriented for leagues and networks.
And you guys are pre-launch, so what should properties should they be? Is now the right time to have conversation with you? And would love to hear from Natara on this. How early is too early? Do you feel like you need to have a case study? You've got your Twitter background, which helps tremendously, but where do you think the right time is? And giving advice, we know we'll have startups watching this, tuning in. What's the best time? Is there a right time? Is it too early? Are there just some, is there a point for a startup for the NFL that it's just too early to talk to them?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Blake Stuchin and the NFL BD team. They're the first. Blake was the first person to take my call and just listen me out as a friend when this was just an idea. And it has been tremendously encouraging. And my general just demeanor and attitude about the leagues is that they want to help you. They want the ecosystem to be healthier because everyone wins, right? And so I think that we've engaged, thankfully, with all the leagues so far, and we're working through the licensing, and it's been a very just productive experience of building the product while actively having partnership discussions. A lot of times you build a product and you try to fit a partner in, right? And I think as we are, some may say we're building the plane as we're flying, but I say it is, we're incredibly intentional about what we build because we know what our partners want and what they need, right? And so, a crux of this business is the licensing business, right? And really understanding the sports rights, and really building a product that complements the existing sports rights out there. Because again, we don't want to replace television. Television is going nowhere. I know there's a lot of headlines about cord cutting, and will go its course. But for us, it's more about how do we complement television.
Yeah, makes sense. So we got a few minutes left. I'm a startup founder. I've got the next greatest thing since sliced bread for your organization. Natara, Craig, you guys have been through the ringer. You hear pitches, you've given them. What should I avoid doing? And what is the best way into your organization? And any tips you can give me as a founder out there to get in and make a compelling case for a partnership?
Sure. The one thing I would say is if you're a startup and you have this great product or service or what have you, or idea even, is really understanding the business of the leagues. I think where a lot of companies go wrong is they're like, I have this great idea, I'm going to make all this money because I'm going to partner with the leagues. And that's not exactly how this goes. We are, as a league, we are beholden to our clubs. And so it's not that we're just sitting on this pot of gold and gonna dish it out to the next best thing. So when people come to the league, they're looking for this, for us to be just as know-how as they are in their specific industry. And we're not necessarily. And so one of the things I find that they struggle with is really understanding how they may solve the problem, but they don't understand the dynamics of how the league structure works. So how that's going to impact the all 32 clubs, how they're going to have to service all 32 clubs, how that's actually going to be a huge capital outlay for them. That, as a financial person, that's one of the biggest things. I'm like, we are a huge vessel, we're not a speedboat, and so we're going to move slow in adopting things, and so you need to be able to stay the course. So just a lot of I can do what I can do, it's really fall off when they can't necessarily understand the business as well as how long it really does take to get something implemented with at least the NFL. And then the other thing I think you asked was just how do you get in? Obviously, knowing someone in this business, if you're talking about sports, any property, it is about networking and knowing someone in one of the leagues that is going to take your call, as Bo said, and really try to help you. I think there's a lot of people in our industry who want to do that. But just recognizing that we do get a lot of calls. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is actually set up an intake system, because what the other pandemic that we haven't spoken about has told us is that we need to make sure that we are open door and inclusive of individuals who don't have those contacts within the league office or within other sports properties and entertainment properties. And so how do we make sure that just because I don't know Natara or I don't know Bo or Craig or Gina, that my great idea isn't sitting at home because I don't know who to call. And so we want to make that more broad. We want to make that more inclusive. So like you mentioned, First and Future, we do things at other properties like South by Southwest, CES. We do things at Draft. We're actually putting together a pitch competition that's going to roll out in 2021, as well as the PA does one as well with their pitch day that's coming up soon. So there's a lot of opportunities, but we just need to, it's on us to make sure that people know what those are and can really, bring us their ideas through those mediums.
Amazing. And Craig, we got another minute or two left. Bring us home. I want to hear what's some advice you were given coming up. What are some lessons you learned? What are some major watch outs maybe you could share with some startup founders out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Natara and Bo kind of just set me up for this real quick, but I totally agree. Like, on the league level, our way into the NFL, just to stick with an example close to all of us here, it was from a client that we work with, one of their clubs, and getting that reference. So when it came time this past year with their major events group, as that's out there in public now, they're cashless and contactless at the Super Bowl, right? Mobile ticketing and mobile payments. And yeah, we were thankfully we were selected for that project and partnership now. But that comes because of, you have a client that they already work with, one of their clubs, or ideally multiple, that will speak on your behalf. And again, they're not going to say you're perfect, but have you been accountable along the way? So I think if you're thinking of a league strategy and to get in the door, think of it that way. You can knock on the league door, but there's also, progress you can make with their teams and clubs along the way. And then finally, people, which Bo hit on, right? And it does, yourself and the team around you. But also my advice, it happens all the time. It happened this morning. It happened yesterday. People reaching out in my close network that suggests that I should take a meeting with someone, a startup. And you know what? Because they're in my close network and I trust their opinion, I'm going to take that. So, but that you have to work on those. That takes time and commitment to build those relationships. So someone that's in my network is going to reach out on their behalf. And that's really the best way to get started. But you have to have things in order, right? In order for that all to come together, you have to do your homework and be prepared. So
amazing. Well, I definitely heard a recurring theme here. A lot of building trust, accountability, strengthening that network, and then giving them time. You guys you're very busy. It takes time. It's a slog, but stick with it for all of the founders and entrepreneurs and ideas folks out there. So guys, thank you so much for your time today. We were thrilled to glean your insight in building this bridge between startups and properties. Thanks everyone for tuning in and sharing the event with us today. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Octagon, and enjoy the rest of CES Partner Day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thank you.